Josh Raven here with the Daily Dot at the League of Legends World Championship quarterfinals with LCK and Worldscaster MonteCristo. And now, Monty, we've already found out our first semi-final, and that is going to be Origin versus SKT. Many favouring the Korean team. Do you think there's any universe where Origin can pull that game out, and how would they do it?
I think it's extraordinarily unlikely, given a lot of Origin's performance and tendencies, just because we do see that Origin likes to play these very long, drawn-out games, and against the Flash Wolves, another team that likes to do that, they weren't really facing a lot of aggression early. That's not going to be the case against SK Telecom, which will really push them to the brink. Also, mistakes that they repeatedly make, like Soaz split pushing and getting killed top frequently, those are mistakes that will be snowballed by SKT. So I think Origin is a good team, but given Peke's champion pool too, unless Peke has a really deep champion pool that I don't know about it and can perform on probably 4 or 5 different picks that we haven't even seen yet, I would say that is the factor that could change things, but I don't have a lot of faith that they can actually win that best of 5.
While Origin and perhaps Europe have been doing quite well at this tournament, one region that's underperformed hugely is North America. What do you think the reason is for North America's downfall in this tournament?
Has North America underperformed? Did they really fail to meet expectations? If you're going to ask that question, you should ask it about China, which is the region that we thought was going to do well. I think even the most optimistic person only had CLG maybe making it out of groups. So, I mean, the answer is North America. It was pretty much performed as expected, in my opinion. In fact, I will say it. North America overperformed. I expected TSM and C9 to both go 0-6 in groups.
Well, you mentioned China. The next question was actually going to be China and why they've also been underperforming. I decided to go with North America first, so maybe you want to have a go at China as well.
China's really confusing. I don't think that they prepared very well coming into this event, and I mean, we know that from several of the teams saying that they really lacked in that element of preparation. I think that LGD having all of these management and staff issues right before the World Finals started is a big problem that we also saw happen with Samsung Ozone back in the day when they moved from MVP Ozone to Samsung Ozone in Season 3. They had a lot of staff turnover, and I think that caused them to underperform a couple years back. But as for IG, they were inconsistent. I didn't know which one was going to show up. And EDG, they're probably the most confusing, but with their top lane injuries and the meta being focused around a top lane style, as we're talking right now, they're down 0-2 to Fnatic. So don't think they're going to win this best of 5, just given what I've seen already. So lack of preparation for LGD, inconsistent playstyle from IG, and then EDG not prepared for this meta would be, I think there's a different reason for every one of those teams.
You mentioned the meta. Obviously there was a very large swing coming into the tournament, a lot of changes, and what are your thoughts on that meta? Do you think some teams have adapted better than others, and do you think that's been the reason for some of this?
I think there's some truth in saying in esports that the best team will always adapt. The best team's adaptation is part of being in League of Legends to be a good team. So I think we're going to see most of the good teams still make it out and through this adaptive period. That said, I'm really not a fan of the massive patch change right before the World Championship. I think it's pretty much bullshit that they would make such drastic sweeping changes and have no competitive games up until the World Championship, so we don't even know what's broken and what's not, what needs fixing. So I think it's a really bad way to host a tournament, and it's disappointing, but I still think the best team will win.
One of the talking points of the tournament, especially with Origin and Fnatic's success so far, has been this East versus West debate and whether Europe is catching up to Korea. Do you think that's happening? And if they have not caught up yet, what do you think needs to be done for them to get to that point?
I mean, they haven't caught up. In Korea, the Koreans have taken mostly new players or players that weren't on premier teams and turn them into premier teams this year. It's an infrastructure question, again, it always has been. And you can say, oh, well, the gap is closing, but realistically, while Europe and NA are moving towards better infrastructure, we can't just invent people with 10 years of experience, right? Those people have to spend 10 years to get the kind of experience that the Koreans, organizations, and the coaches have in the world of esports. So it'll happen slowly, because it's just going to take time, and that's it. There's not much else to be said. I don't think the gap is closing in any way, shape, or form. I guess we'll see. Maybe Fnatic will make the finals. They look like a strong team, but I don't think they will. And what does the gap is closing mean when we have this, like literally last year, the Korean teams in group stages were 15-3. 15-3 again this year. We're in a situation where we could have 2 Korean teams in semis, sure, 2 European teams too, but they didn't have to meet each other in the semis, and one of the European teams got smashed. So.
Do you think the difference between the regions, do you think it's down to vast player skill between the players, or do you think they're quite close, or is it purely down to the infrastructure of the regions?
Both. I mean, you just look at the server populations in Korea compared to North America. The percentage of players that play ranked in Korea is significantly higher, in addition to them having more players on the server. So there's just a higher competitive region. It's cultural. Koreans are incredibly competitive naturally. They're trained that way in school to compete with one another for academics, for everything in life. So it's cultural, server population, acceptance of esports within Korea, infrastructure, there's a ton of things. You can't just, it's not easy to pin it down to just one thing.
Thank you very much for the interview, Monty.
My pleasure, thanks.